Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There's some. Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala Sayyid al-Awwaleen wal Akhirin Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Peace and best blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and upon his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. As to what follows, my beloved brothers and sisters, to our viewers, to our friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another opportunity to dig deep into Islamic history, to try to understand what had happened in the past in order to make clear what is happening today. And that is crucial about history itself, that it is not merely an intellectual exercise, but it is understanding the experiences of the people who came before us, the living trace of human beings struggling in different time periods. And that gives us a type of qawa'id, some rules that we can live by in the present world today. And so we are looking at the Muslim world, the Ummah, as a body. And within this body, as was predicted by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, there was a breakdown. And the main Ummah, the main body of Islam, broke down into different sections. And the Prophet ﷺ, as we had learned before, told his companions that those who lived after me, you will see many differences. But hold on to my sunnah, hold on to my way, and the way of the Khulafa al-Rashidin. Stick to this, hold on to this, bite into it with your molars. Make it the foundation of your life. And that inspiration gave direction to the believers as they went forward. And we understood the reality of life, that human beings can choose between right and wrong. And although Islam is the perfect, perfected way of life, the final revelation, the Muslims in all time periods have to struggle with their egos, with their material desires, with their tribal divisions in order to overcome the obstacles that are placed in their path. In addition to this, talbis iblis, there is the deception of the shaitan, wal-iyadhu billah, that he promised to do from the beginning of time to confuse people, to come from around them, to make them change the creation of Allah. And so it was that even in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, liar prophets appeared. Just after his time, divisions started to come in. And it reached the point where a great battle ensued between two Muslim bodies, both on the right path, but they were divided. Many lives were lost. It was a fitna. It was a trial, a tribulation. But out of this, Islam continued, and Muslims were able to make their prayers, to fast, to make the pilgrimage, to die with the shahada of one God. And so Islam continued on with the struggles of human beings. The original group, and I want to again emphasize this point, what we call today Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is the people of the Sunnah. This is the body, the main body of the believers. This was and still is the overwhelming majority of the Muslims. Islam did not start as one group and suddenly break into two equal sects, one going to the right and one to the left. This is an exaggeration that has been extended by the media into the educational system, online, and into the common thinking of the people on the ground. The reality is, when we look at Islamic history, we realize that of the many divisions, the most important one that we see is the division of the Shia. And the concept of the Shia was not in the original teachings. And when the conflict happened between Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh and Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anh, when the division happened and the two parties were in conflict, the group of Muawiyah was called Shia to Muawiyah, and the group of Ali was Shia to Ali. And this is the first time that Shia, as a concept describing a group, was actually being used. Up until that time, it is the Quran, it is the Sunnah, it is the consensus of the scholars, it is the Islamic consciousness that is built by following these sources. And so eventually, when the fitna erupted and Ali himself was assassinated, and his son Al-Hassan radiallahu anh was chosen by the Muslims, not instated as a kingdom. He was put in by the Muslims, but in order to bring peace between the two warring sides, Al-Hassan radiallahu anh gave over the Khilafat to Muawiyah. It was legitimate. It was accepted by the overwhelming majority of the ulama, of the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And so what was then Shia to Muawiyah, it became the government, and it became known as the Umayyad dynasty. And so Shia to Ali were the people who were supporting Ali radiallahu anh, who had based himself now in Kufa. So Iraq was the political center of the Muslim world during the Khilafat of Ali, and the people in that area overwhelmingly supported the Khalifa. Ali radiallahu anh was very clear in his understanding, and even when people started to aggrandize, they exaggerated in relating to him, he completely rejected this concept. So we divided up Shiism. Again, you see people say Tashayyu', that is in Arabic, or Shiites, that is in straight English. We're saying Shiism, so it's all basically the same. But you can say that one group is the political form, and that is the group that supported Ali, and they were opposed to oppression coming out of the Umayyads. Because the greatest mistake that Muawiyah made after opposing Ali when he was Khalifa is to choose his son Yazid as the next ruler. He changed it from a khilafat to mulk, to a kingdom. And so he was opposed. He was opposed not only by Al-Hussein, radiallahu anh, but he was opposed by Abdullah ibn Zubair, radiallahu anhu. And that was the political opposition. And so Abdullah ibn Zubair, ruling over 10 years in Mecca, and announced his own khilafat there, and was supported around the Arabian Peninsula, has nothing to do with the Shia, but this is opposition to Yazid. So the first thing we need to understand is that the opposition to Yazid and the wrong choices of the Umayyads was not just something that was put forward by the Shia itself, but it was a general feeling amongst the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. But in order to stabilize, in order to keep the Muslim world developing, the companions accepted, for the most part, the rule of the Umayyads, except for the oppression, especially in the assassination of Al-Hussein and his family. And so out of this trauma, the trauma of the killing of Hussein, the people of Kufa, who had promised to support him, went into a strange mindset, tawadubun. These are the people of repentance. And so they went to Karbala, where Al-Hussein was killed, and they wanted to repent, they wanted to do something in order to make up to this. So it was a traumatized period for the people, especially living in Iraq and in the rest of the Muslim world. In the time of the trauma, this is where the deception of the shaitan comes in. And the evil one succeeded in deceiving individuals, to deceive the royal family of the Sassanids, Persian dynasty, to try to come back and to seize power in the Muslim world, to also deceive the hypocrites amongst the Muslims, to deceive the people of the book, to try to oppose the last message. And Kufa itself was always a bed of extremism. So many different cults and organizations. It was the homeland of a Siha, of magic, that came out of Babylon. And so the next division in Shiism is what we call theological Shiism. Political Shiism is the support of Ali, the opposition to the Umayyads. But the people were basically the same. Their prayers were the same, their concepts were the same, their beliefs were the same. But theological Shiism is where the trauma and where the evil acts of individuals and the shaitan wa'iyadu billah succeeded in developing a type of theological expression based upon the opposition group. And extreme elements amongst the Iraqi Shia began to not only deify Ali radiallahu anh, but also to attribute sole leadership to his family, and to even curse Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma for taking the rule away from him. The former Sassanids, the followers of Abdullah ibn Saba, they all came together. And we even see extreme forms of this extreme ideology. The case of Ishaq ibn Muhammad al-Ahma, who claimed that Ali was Allah, that he appears all the time. Sometimes he's al-Hasan, sometimes he's Hussein. It's saying here, we'll take a break for a slight moment. It's saying restart to install the newest feature. I'll say remind me later. Okay? Okay. So we'll continue on. Slight technical glitch there. And the Shia to Ali, the political Shia, continued to support the family. And this support was the protection of the family and the support for the strong position of the Sunnah that Ali radiallahu anh had put forward. And this was followed by members of his family. And we find even a case where Imam Zayd ibn Ali ibn al-Hussein, so this is the grandson, okay, of al-Hussein, was opposed to the Umayyads as well. And he was being coaxed by the people of Iraq into a type of rebellion. And a group of these people, again, this is the theological Shia coming in, they asked him to curse Abu Bakr and to curse Umar. He refused to do this. And when he did that, they left him. And he said to them, Rafadtumuni, you denied me. And the name Ar-Rafidah came forward, and these were the extreme theological Shia. So Ar-Rafidah now takes shape as a group, and the struggling Ahlul Bayt, Imam Zayd himself was eventually killed in the year 740. They continue on, but the Rafidah itself then morphs into, it starts to take a shape into what we will see, we will call the Imamate, and that is the Twelvers, Itna Ashari Shia. But the political Shia, in taking a shape, turned into the Zaydiyah. That's the followers of Imam Zayd. May Allah be pleased with him. And again, there's a lot of names, and I just want to just show you these names to reinforce what we are going in. We will repeat certain things for a purpose, because it takes time for this to really set in and for us to fully understand it. So you can see on the chart there is Ali and Fatima, and that is the closest to a bloodline, because the Prophet ﷺ had no sons that succeeded him. And Al-Hussein and Al-Hassan, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. When we look at the bloodline, we see Al-Hussein was given when Iraq was defeated, when the Sassanid dynasty fell. The royal family, many of them were captured, and Sher Banu, one of the princesses of the royal family, was given to Al-Hussein as a right-hand possession, a bonded servant, and he freed her and he married her. And so the children of Al-Hussein and Sher Banu then carry the bloodline of the Prophet ﷺ, and also the dynastic bloodline of the Sassanid dynasty. And so from that bloodline, we have Ali Zain al-Abidin, who is the successor, the survivor coming out of the massacre of Al-Hussein and his family, Muhammad al-Baqir. And he would be the fifth. And then you see next to him his brother Zayd. So that's Imam Zayd. Again, he's coming from Al-Hussein's family. He refuses to follow theological Shia, the Rafida. Refuses to follow the Rafida, although he is a supporter of Ali and an opposition to the Umayyads. Following Muhammad al-Baqir is Ja'far al-Sadiq, and then Musa al-Kadhim, Ali al-Rida, Muhammad al-Taqi, Ali al-Hadi, Hassan al-Askari, and Muhammad al-Muntadha, who is they consider to be the Mahdi, Imam al-Mahdi. And if you look at the dates, Muhammad, the last of the 12 Imams, died in 878 AD. So this is not a long time after the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And when you look at the lives of the Imams, who were basically the leaders of Ahlul Bayt, they were not a special organization or a special group. You will find that they were, for the most part, practicing the Sunnah, meaning the way of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. The Zaydi Shias today, who inhabit mainly in Yemen, but they also appeared in the Caspian Sea region. That's Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan and parts of Iran and right around the Caspian Sea. They retain the political understanding that Ali should have been the Khalifa. However, they reject many of the practices of the Shia. They reject muta, which is temporary marriage, although they did retain the Shia Adhan. And I will go into more details as we go on. Now, a very key point. Remember, the last Imam dies, he disappears 878 AD. So up until then, the Shia were not a large body. It was just small pockets, but especially in Kufa and in Iraq, you see numbers that are there, but they are not united in a body because the Umayyads were basically the dynastic power in Iraq and Syria and throughout the Muslim world. Hundreds of years go by, and it is 600 plus years. It was around the year 1502 AD that the Safavid dynasty established themselves in Persia. And it's interesting because their leader, Shah Ismail, was actually Turkish. And he embraced the teachings of Shiism. And with his power and organization, he succeeded in conquering much of what is now present-day Persia. And he announced that the state religion would be the Itna Ashari Shia, the 12ers, meaning those who follow 12 Imams of the Shia, the theological form of the Shia. This would be the state religion. And if anybody opposed this, they would be executed. So for the first time now, we find the Itna Ashari Shia taking a state form. And this is important because people think, or they're made to think, that the division was a huge division from early days of Islam. That's not the case. It is not really until this time that the Itna Ashari, or the Twelvers, actually take a distinguishing form. And again, because there are so many different peoples and factions, and there were so many schismatic groups that came out of Kufa and Basra and the Iraq area, that we don't have time to mention some of the different groups that actually developed, the schisms and the sects and the cults. But what is developing overall in the theology of the Ithna Ashari Shia, and this is what is developed especially in the Safavid dynasty, what we see is that a type of theology is now developing. And this is where a person who is a Shia can look at a Sunni, this is the overwhelming majority, and say, I am Shia and you are the Sunni. That never happened in the past. And again, it was the area of Iraq. Some of the Zaydiyas went up into the Caspian region. Some of them went down into Yemen. You'll see eventually some in North Africa. But outside of that, the overwhelming majority of the Muslims, all throughout the states in the north, the Chechnya and Dagestan, and all the way through India and all the way to China, down into Southeast Asia, the Swahili coast of East Africa, across North Africa, up into Al-Andalus, Spain and Portugal, that was a great empire of Islam. All of it is Sunni. Across the desert into West Africa, all of it is Sunni. Down into the Sudan, into the Sahara region of Chad and Bornu, and all of it is Sunni. So the overwhelming majority of the people of Islam, the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it is the main body of the believers. But the small group concentrated in Iraq, Ithna Ashari Shia, and then taking a state form in Persia under the Safavids, develop a theology. And these are some of the key distinguishing points of the theological Ithna Ashari Shia. Number one is the concept of imamate. Two is their concept dealing with the Prophet's companions, the Sahaba. Three is their perspective on the Quran itself. Four is the concept of temporary marriage. And five is the doctrine of taqiyya, pious deception, dissimulation. And we want to look at these five areas. There are other minor points, but you could say that these are some of the more prominent theological divisions. And again, the Ithna Ashari Shia, there are different levels of it. There are some who take extreme positions, but there are others who, again, have more that political form and not so much concerned in the theology. And so the ulama of Islam basically considered them to be in the ummah. And up until now, the Ithna Ashari Shia make Hajj. Even the ulama of Arabia, who tend to be very strict when it comes to Aqidah, they accept the Ithna Asharis as part of the Ummah, and they make Hajj and they make Umrah, and they are going to the blessed sites. So now let's look at the concept of the Khilafat. The Khilafat, meaning the Caliph or the Caliphate. The Khalifa was the successor or the deputy representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, vicegerent. So who steps into the shoes of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So this is a very important position. This is the head of the Muslim world. And it is not reserved to a special family. And that was the difference between the Khulafa al-Rashidin and the Umayyads, where it literally became a royal family. Three, that a person cannot decide, I would like to be the Khalifa. And then he starts politically working towards this. That's not how it is done. the Muslim Ummah, through Shura, that's mutual consultation, choose the most suitable person to be the Khalifa. And we know from our traditions that if we could find somebody from the Quraysh that is a suitable person, that would be better for us, because that reminds us of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And the Quran was revealed in their tongue, in the Arabic language. Number 4 is that the Khalifa, he uses Shura where others have the right to disagree. And so it is not a dictatorship. It is not a king. It is a Shura system where you have a leader who is an ultimate decision maker based on consultation. And once the Khalifa dies or becomes incapacitated, his office does not pass on to his son. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh made that clear when they came to him after he had been stabbed. And they said, "What do you say about Al-Hassan?" He said, "I don't say yes, that you choose him, and I don't say no." So he left it to the Shura, and Al-Hassan was chosen. Also, the Khalifa, the Caliph, is mortal. He is a human being, and there is no supernatural powers that the person possesses. This concept of the leader having a type of divine makeup, being connected to the sun god, being connected to the powers of the universe, this is part of the ancient belief systems that you found amongst the Persians, the Romans. You found it amongst many of the Fara'ina, the pharaohs of Egypt. In many parts of the world, that's not our concept. The Quran establishes clear in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 13, "Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum," that verily the most honored amongst you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous. That's the most honored, not by blood. Because if it was by blood alone, I want you to think about this. The uncle of the Prophet, peace and blessing upon him, Abu Lahab, was Hashimi. He had the noble blood in his vein, and yet he is burning in hell. And he's called the father of the flames. So the blood was not enough, and it is still not enough. In Surah An-Nur, verse 55, Allah tells us that he has promised to those amongst you who believe and work righteous deeds that he will surely grant them power in the earth. Istikhlaf. He will grant them power in the earth as he granted those from before. He also tells us clearly to the believers, "O you who believe, Ati'ullah, obey Allah, his messenger, wa ulul amri minkum." So obey Allah and his messenger and those who are trusted with authority. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Hear and obey no matter who is chosen as your leader." So that's the concept that we have of the Khilafat. The Shia concept is something different. And again, the word imam or imamate, it is used in many different ways. There is imam who just leads people in salat. There is imam, sometimes the head of a community or the leader of a masjid. But in this case, the concept that develops through theological Shiism, which manifests itself in the Safavid dynasty in the 16th century, is that the imam is designated by Allah. So this is not something that is by shura. It is designated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And imamate is reserved for Ali and his progeny through Fatima. So it's an automatic transfer to the eldest son. So whoever is the eldest son that is surviving in this family automatically becomes the imam. Also, in this theological Shiism, the imams are infallible and divinely protected. That means they don't make mistakes. Now, that of course is going to put them different than the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Because as a human being, he made mistakes. Abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahul a'ma. That when the blind Sahabi came to him, Abdullahi, he frowned away from him. He was trying to deal with Quraysh, and Allah corrected him. It was a mistake. But according to the imamate concept, they are ma'soom. They are completely infallible. Also, in this theological Shiism form, the imams are not ordinary human beings, but they are equal, you could say, to prophets. Not exactly the same. They don't use the word prophet for them. But in terms of their status, you could even say in some ways it's higher, because some of their reports even say that the creation, all the creation submits to the imams. So this is a high rank, to the point where they installed imamate as one of the pillars of Islam. We have Arkan al-Islam. We have our 5 pillars of Shahada, of Salat, of Zakat, of fasting, of Hajj. They instituted imamate as one of the pillars. And this was never there before. The famous hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, when he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "Tell me about Islam." And the Prophet ﷺ gave him the 5 pillars. It is changed now. So the imamate then is a different, it's actually moving in to the level of almost being a different religion. And those who go to the extreme become almost like a different religion. And on the authority of Imam Baqir, this is one of their books, Islam is based on 5 pillars, on prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, zakat, and imamate. Out of these, the most important and the preferred one is the belief in imamate. So they took out the shahada in the beginning, and they put in imamate. So this is comes from their book, one of the Shia texts, because they have their own tafsir and their own set of chains for hadith. This is from Usul al-Kafi by Muhammad ibn Yaqub al-Kulaini. So this is, al-Kulaini is one of their leading scholars. So what I'm bringing to you is basically coming out of their text, and is confirmed in their texts as well. Now, the Shia concept of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Now, remember the Prophet ﷺ, remember what he said. Khairun nas qarni, thumma alladhina yalunahum, thumma alladhina yalunahum. The best of people are in my generation, and then the ones that follow them, and then the ones that follow them. Best people. Many cases, do not curse my companions. So many things that he said about his companions. But according to their concepts, and again, you'll get varying positions, but the most prominent is that the companions, they actually gave up their Islam after the Prophet ﷺ left. Only Miqdad, Abu Dhar, and Salman al-Farisi, that these 3, they were still okay. But the rest of them, they gave up. And so the Khilafat was illegitimate. So they believed that the first 3 Khalifas, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, they were illegitimate. They were not supposed to be put into the position, that there are proofs. And they actually try to interpret different texts, different historical factions, to actually support what actually happened. So one of their groups made the statement, and it's part of their motto. They said, we're talking about the Sahaba, Khan al-Amana wa Khan al-Risala, that they broke the trust. They broke their relationship with the Risala, with the prophethood. And they deserve to be cursed. And so they will literally do seb. They will curse the companions. Well, iyadu billah. And that is something that the Prophet ﷺ was very strict upon. Do not curse my companions, he said in one tradition, because you will never give what they gave. Even if you gave Mount Uhud in gold, you will never be able to give what they gave. So this is a distorted look at the companions. And if you think about this, if the overwhelming companions, the best generation, if they basically broke the sacred trust, they deceived the trust, they deceived the Prophet, then what is it for the rest of us? Islam is finished. If that was our concept, then you can throw Islam in the waste barrel. Because if they can't make it, nobody can make it. So by taking this on, it develops a pessimistic, gloomy look at the whole of Islamic history that you'll see certain writers fall into with this wrong concept. And unfortunately, because so many texts were written coming out with no verifications, you'll see this distorted concept of Islamic history also appearing. In terms of the Quran itself, the position of the Ahl Sunnah is that the text and the arrangement are based on revelation. And so we believe that Jibreel alayhi salam brought this right from Iqra, right in the beginning of it, and right through to the end, to the last verses. The arrangement actually is coming through Jibreel alayhi salam, and that this is part of the divine protection. Two is that we believe that the book is preserved in the hearts and the minds of the Ummah. And alhamdulillah, from the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, they were not only people who wrote down the texts in whatever form they could, but there was a large body of companions who committed it to memory. And it was the leaders of this group that actually took the text themselves and put it together, checked it over through what they had memorized collectively, and that was very clear. And written copies were organized by the Khalifa Uthman radiallahu anhu and sent to the capitals of Islam. And you'll find in the Quran, Surah Ash-Shura, verse number 5, Surah Al-Hijr, verse number 9, Surah Al-Qiyamah, verse 17, Surah Al-Buruj, Bal huwa Qur'anun Majid fi lawhin mahfud. And this is a glorious Quran. It's a preserved from a preserved tablet. And so that is the position of the Ahl Sunnah, that this is part of Allah's protection. That Allah said, we will protect this book and we will be the ones who preserve it. The Shia position, the overwhelming position, is that the Quran that we have right now is not the only divine book revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Also, groups amongst them, and again, you won't get 100% because they have different factions in groups, but there are groups that believe that numerous verses are actually missing. And there are some who believe that sequences in the Quran have been changed, chapters have been changed, and even deleted. And they brought a chapter called Surah Al-Wilaya. And of course, this is the one that establishes the wilaya, or the rule for Ali radiallahu anhu being Waliullah. And that's what they put into the adhan. So they say that this was taken out as well. Okay. Again, that goes against the overwhelming memorization of the people designated by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to take the Quran from them, and also the texts that were put together. So we can see with this that the concepts that are developing now is literally taking us in a stream. The mainstream of Islam, that is the position of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is the overwhelming body of the Muslims. And again, Islam had spread to the four corners of the earth. Muslims had gone within 100 years to the Atlantic Ocean. And if you went to the Atlantic Ocean, you would find them in Morocco and also in Portugal and Spain, called Al-Andalus. They were Maliki in fiqh, and they were very strong lovers and practitioners of the Sunnah. If you went down across the Sahara Desert into the lands of West Africa, you will again find 100% Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Across North Africa and the Sahara, you will find in the Sudan, overwhelmingly, you will find Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And we'll study a faction that develops later on that happens in North Africa. But far to the north, in what is now Chechnya and Turkmenistan and Dagestan and those regions in the north, Mawara an-Naha, in the Oxus, what is beyond the Oxus River, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Those who even made it into China, and some of the companions and Tabi'een even made it there, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Those who eventually made it down into Southeast Asia, and there was some coming into parts of India on the Malabar coast, down into Indonesia, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, carrying it all the way around in Southeast Asia. This is all the Sunnah, and it is only pockets, small pockets, that is in Iraq, and eventually some in Yemen, and in North Africa you will find what is known as the Shia. So this is not a major split or a major division. But because of the impact of individuals, because of the impact that comes out of it, and again, what theological Shiism did is that it opened up the door. Political Shiism, supporting the Ahlul Bayt, did not change the practice of Islam. It did not change Aqidah. It did not change the concept of the Khilafat. It did not change the concept of the Quran. It did not change the concept of the Sahaba. But theological Shiism now begins to bring in different concepts, and the swirling debates and the swirling groups that start to come in, especially in Iraq, in the area of Kufa, the door is now open for other concepts to come in. And this is where you see in the development of Islam, you then see that the great Imams develop the schools of thought. You'll see that the hadith books are started to be collected, and you'll see that the authenticity even of the hadith is protected. And surprisingly enough, if you look at modern day Iran, Persian area, and look at the hadith scholars, Bukhari and Muslim, Ibn Majah, At-Tirmidhi, look at the major hadith scholars, they all come from Persia. So it is not necessarily a thing that comes out of Egypt or Arabia or Syria. Many of the main hadith scholars came out of Persia. And so that means that the Persian area in the first few hundred years of Islam was solid Sunnah. Even that area was solid Sunnah. And it was not until the 16th century, when the Safavids came in, that the Ithna Ashari concepts are put into state rule. The constitutions that they develop mean that somebody from the Ithna Ashari Shia must rule the country itself. And so the door was open. And what develops out of this is another sect which becomes one of the most dangerous groups in the history of Islam. And that is the Ismaeli sect. And we will be going over this in more details. But remember the Imams that were coming in. Ali was the first, and then Al-Hassan, right? And then Al-Hussein, and then Ali, Zayn al-Abidin, Muhammad Baqir. Then it's coming down to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Now remember, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was a companion of Imam Malik. He was loved by the people of Medina. And it was not in a different cult, in a different group, praying differently than everybody else. No. They knew each other. They were very close to each other in Medina itself. But he was the elder member of the Ahlul Bayt and was given the authority to protect and to represent the Ahlul Bayt, and normally the oldest son would then take over. His oldest son would have been Ismail. But Ismail died in the year 760 AD, and Ja'far as-Sadiq then passes away. And so Ismail would have been chosen as the seventh Imam, but he passes away, and Musa al-Kadhim was put into place as the seventh Imam. So in the Itna Ashari, and we'll go over this to show you it in a little bit more details, the Itna Ashari concept that is coming, you find that Ismail is not in there, Musa al-Kadhim. But the followers of Ismail, who thought that he should have been seven, but he passed away, they chose his son to then take over. So then they accepted Muhammad, the son of Ismail, as the seventh Imam, and a branch starts to develop, different than the Itna Ashari. But their Imams lived in disguise. And this concept of taqiyya, of tuqya, and I had mentioned that earlier, and that is pious deception. Because of the struggle that was going on with the Umayyads, and then later on with the Abbasids, who seized power after the Umayyads, the struggle with the Ahlul Bayt, and sometimes oppression of the Ahlul Bayt, the political Shiism, the ones protecting the family, they had to go underground. And so to protect their lives, they even developed a type of disguise or a pious deception. And they took it to the level, the extreme, was that you could literally lie to somebody of the Sunnah, and you're literally getting blessings for this. And so that was an extreme position to take. And the door is wide open now. And what enters the scene opens up one of the most dangerous time periods in terms of the breaking away internal divisions within the Muslim history. And that is that Abdullahi ibn Maymun al-Qaddah, an occultist who died in 825, he became the chief missionary and ideologue of the Ismailis. Now remember now, the group that didn't accept Musa al-Kadhim as number 7, they wanted Ismail and they took his son, and then below. But this person who comes in, he is coming out of Iraq. Now remember, that is the base of magic. And so he comes in, he is a known occultist. So he is a magician, a person who's dealing with signs and numbers and telling fortunes and all type of secretive type of designs. And he taught strict concealment. And he went underground in Basra and Salamiya in Iraq. And what he developed was a secret society based on gradations. And in order to join this society, you had to be initiated. And there were secret rituals. Sounds familiar, right? Because when you look at the Crusades, when the Europeans are coming in the Crusades, and they run into the Ismailis, and those of you who study the history, you will see, sometimes unity happening between the Ismailis and the Crusaders against the Sunnah. The culture of Islam starts to affect Europe, of course, because Europe at that time was living in its dark ages. And so what develops is secret societies. The Knights Templar, who were paramilitary knights, you can see directly they are affected by this secret society initiation, grades, gradation, secret rituals, and they literally are the base of the free Masonic rituals and Freemasonry. So those of you who are into this, you can see a historical base. The Ismaili group, the cult, they chose number 7 as their sacred number. And again, this goes back to the numerology of the past. 7 is a very important number, and we see it coming in, 7 heavens and 7 earths, and how important number 7 is. But for them, it was a sacred number. And they were even called after this the Seveners, Sab'iyya. So the one group is the Itna Ashariya, the Twelvers, and then is the Sab'iyya, which believe in the 7 Imams, not the 12. So I want to briefly take you through, just to try to consolidate some of this in your minds, the genealogical chart. And we're going to go back slowly, and we look at, remember, the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, Quraysh going back, Qusay, remember Abdul Uzza, Abdul Manaf, Abdul Dar. Now remember Hashim coming from Abdul Manaf. From Hashim is Abdul Muttalib, right? From Abdul Muttalib, he had his many sons. There is Abdullah. From Abdullah, there is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. That's the line of Banu Hashim. And you can see the Umayyads now coming on the other side. It's still Quraysh. And Abu Talib's side of Uqayl, Ja'far, and Ali. So according to the Shia, the first Imam who was designated by Allah to be the ruler of Islam was Ali. That's number 1. Now, Ali marries Fatima. There's no sons. So the closest bloodline is then coming through Ali and Fatima. From him comes the second Imam, who they consider to be Al-Hassan, the third Imam, Al-Hussein, and then from Al-Hassan, as we will speak about later, there are the Idrisids. Now this is very interesting too, because the royal family in Morocco, they claim to be Ahlul Bayt, but their connection is through Al-Hassan, and that is the Idrisids, and they were based in Fez in North Africa. So going back to the Itna Ashari setup, the fourth was Ali Zain al-Abidin. The fifth Imam was Muhammad al-Baqir, and remember Zayd now. And Zayd refused to accept theological Shiism, and he broke away, still struggling against the Umayyads. That's the Ahlul Bayt, the political Shiism. So he's not considered one of the Imams of the Itna Ashariya. Okay, number 6 is Ja'far as-Sadiq. Okay, and number 7 is Musa al-Kadhim. And remember, Ismail would have been the Imam. There are reports also to say that Imam Ja'far did not choose him because he had some character problems. Some reports say that he actually drank alcohol. And again, we're not sure of all of these reports, but for whatever the reason is, although he was the oldest son, he was not clearly designated, and then he died. So Musa al-Kadhim took over as number 7. But the Ismailis now, their group breaks away and starts their own Sab'iyya, which we will see develops later into the Ismaeli Fatimids of Egypt. So going back to the Itna Ashari on your left, Ali al-Rida number 8, Muhammad al-Taqi 9, Ali al-Hadi 10, Hassan al-Askari 11, Muhammad al-Muntada 12, and again, he dies in 878, and according to the Itna Ashari belief, he was being attacked by the Abbasids, and he crawled in, as a young man, crawled into a type of sirdab, and a closed area in the back of one of the masjids, and he is occult, he is alive. And in many of the reports, they believe he is alive and he will come back as Imam al-Mahdi. But look at when he died. We're in 2021, and this is 878 that he died, or he went into an occult state. So all of those centuries, and he's still alive. We have nothing to support this coming out of the Quran, nothing from the Sunnah. And if something as important as this was to have occurred, the Prophet ﷺ would have mentioned it, because he was not allowed to leave out important information such as this. So this is a general flow. of the major Ithna Ashari breakaway, which forms this theological Shiism and opens the door for many other schisms and isms and sects to now start to develop, the largest of which is the Ismailis. And it opens up the door to al-Batiniyya. And these are the people of the occult. These are the people who take it to a level that even the Ithna Ashari consider them outside of Islam. So we want to look at this and how it develops, but the door was open. So we want to stop here at this point, continuing our flow. And again, as in the past, if there are any questions that you have, you can put it in the chat, and we'll take a few moments to field your questions. If you have anything coming in terms of this information. Again, I will be repeating and going over certain concepts so that you can get a flow to it and then start to understand it. And it'll help you as a guide. And these names that you see will be coming up, but now things will come clearer to you because you have the history. So do we have any questions coming so far? So if you didn't have a question right now, I want you to write it down and to put it, if you can, into the Facebook or put it in the chat. Keep it for next week, because we will be going on, not physically next week. And this is another announcement, because next week, inshallah, there's no class. I will be out of the country, inshallah. The following Tuesday, the class will resume. Okay, so next week, no class. The following week, inshallah, we'll be back to continue with al-Batiniyya, to look at the real secretive cults that bring on something unprecedented in Islamic history. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal would bless all of those who stood for the Sunnah, who died for the Sunnah, and all those who are coming, and bless our children and this world with a clear look at Islam, to drink from the fresh water of the Quran, from the fresh water of the Sunnah, and to help us to live and die in this way. I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah to have mercy on me and you. Wa akhira da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.